Humanity's hidden strength. In the vastness of the Milky Way, great empires had risen and fallen over eons. The Zorgans, masters of 1,000 star systems, and the Criterions, with their ancient technologies, dominated the galactic stage. Countless species bent the knee to these giants, serving as vassals or mere cattle. Amidst this grand tapestry, humanity seemed an unremarkable newcomer. Confined to a single solar system, they had only recently taken their first tentative steps into the cosmos. Most galactic observers dismissed Earth as a backwater, a primitive, fractured world not worthy of attention. They couldn't have been more wrong. Behind a facade of disunity, humanity had been quietly preparing for the day they would inevitably encounter the great powers of the galaxy. The greatest minds of Earth, scientists, strategists, leaders, had long known that they could not compete through sheer numbers or brute strength. Instead, they had poured trillions into research and development, seeking advantages through guile and asymmetric technologies. In hidden research facilities and black site shipyards, Earth's most sensitive projects took shape. Propulsion systems that could outpace the galaxy's swiftest ships, weapons that could phase through the strongest shields, AIs that could outthink and outmaneuver any organic pilot. These and 100 other secret programs formed a hidden arsenal, humanity's trump card against the arrayed strength of a hostile universe. Now, as the great powers turned their eyes toward Sol, humanity prepared to reveal just how dangerous a primitive species could be when pushed to the brink. A foolish ultimatum. Kraxos, supreme overlord of the Zorgan hegemony, gazed at the holographic projection of the Milky Way with contempt. His eyes lingered on an insignificant dot on the galactic fringe. Sol, home of the upstart humans. Reports from scout ships had been concerning. For a pre-FTL civilization, the humans were advancing at an alarming pace. They are a threat, hissed Kraxos' advisor, Zoltran. Uncontrolled, they could disrupt the stability of our empire within decades. Kraxos growled his agreement. Unchecked growth could not be tolerated. It was time to bring the humans to heel, or exterminate them entirely. On Earth, alarms blared as a massive fleet of Zorgan warships suddenly appeared at the edge of the solar system. They immediately accelerated towards Earth, their sublight drives glowing ominously. In the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, recently promoted Defense Secretary Annika Patel watched the Zorgan ships with a mix of fear and anticipation. The moment humanity had long prepared for was finally here. A holographic projection of Overlord Kraxos materialized above the UN General Assembly. His voice boomed with arrogance. People of Earth, your species trespasses on the galactic stage. You disturb the order of the cosmos with your unbound ambitions. This cannot be allowed. Kraxos leaned forward, his eyes cruel. You have one rotation of your planet to surrender unconditionally to the Zorgan hegemony. Refuse, and your species will be eradicated. Comply, and you may yet survive as servants of our great empire. Choose wisely. With that, his image vanished. Shocked silence reigned for a moment before the chamber erupted into panicked debate. Some called for immediate surrender. Others demanded defiance at any cost. Annika stood quietly amidst the chaos, her eyes hard with determination. She had hoped this day would never come. But humanity had not spent decades preparing to simply roll over and submit. They would fight. And the Zorgan hegemony was about to discover what a terrible mistake they had made. Under her breath, Annika whispered words that would soon echo across the solar system. They want battle. We'll give them a war. Shock and awe. Supreme Overlord Kraxos lounged in his command chair as his fleet approached Earth, the primitive defenses arrayed before him. A pitiful collection of atomic warheads and chemical rockets were almost beneath his notice. His ship's shields could shrug off such weapons with ease. They are nothing, he sneered to his bridge crew. We will crush them like insects. As the fleet entered weapons range, Kraxos savored the moment of impending triumph. Then, the impossible happened. From hidden silos across Earth's surface and concealed hangars in orbit, hundreds of fast attack craft suddenly emerge. Shaped like swords and propelled by advanced gravitic drives, they accelerated towards the Zorgan fleet at impossible speeds. Leviathan Squadron, engaging. Wing Commander Mikhail Petrov reported calmly as he and his fellow pilots burned towards the alien ships. There was no fear in his voice, only a grim determination. He and his comrades had trained for this moment for years. The Zorgan ships, caught off guard, scrambled to target the incoming craft. But the human ships were too small, too agile. They danced effortlessly through the hail of plasma fire, their movements coordinated by advanced predictive AI. And then they struck. Lances of blinding white energy leaped from the Leviathans, slicing through Zorgan shields like they were tissue paper. Hulls ruptured, atmosphere vented, and mighty warships spun out of control. Impossible. Kraxos sputtered, his eyes wide with shock and rage as his fleet reeled from the unexpected onslaught. What treachery is this? In her command bunker, Annika Patel watched with grim satisfaction as the first Zorgan warships fell to her secret weapons. The phase lance, painstakingly reverse-engineered from captured alien tech, had performed better than she could have hoped. But she knew this was just the beginning. The wounded beast that was the Zorgan hegemony would not take this humiliation lightly. They would regroup, return with reinforcements. The true test was yet to come. Still, as reports of successful strikes continued to pour in from all fronts, Annika allowed herself a moment of fierce pride. Whatever happened next, this much was clear. The galaxy would never again underestimate the strength and resolve of the human race. Turning the tide. In the days following the initial clash, the true scope of humanity's hidden strength became clear. From the shipyards of Mars, a formidable fleet of warships emerged, easily matching the Zorgan vessels in size and firepower. On Titan and Ganymede, mass accelerator cannons capable of firing kilometer-long tungsten rods at significant fractions of light speed stood ready to intercept any ship that dared approach the inner system. But perhaps most terrifying to the Zorgan invaders were the swarms. Thousands of autonomous fighter drones, each no larger than a compact car, swarmed from launch bays across the solar system. Powered by advanced AIs and armed with phase lances, they proved a nightmare for the Zorgan ships, striking from all angles and adapting their tactics faster than any organic mind could follow. Supreme Overlord Kraxos seethed with fury as reports of losses mounted. Inconceivable that his mighty warships could be laid low by such insignificant gnats. In a fit of rage, he ordered his fleet to launch a full-scale bombardment of Earth's surface. If he could not seize this system intact, he would reduce it to ashes. But even this proved futile. The Zorgan plasma bombs and kinetic impactors, capable of reducing continents to molten slag, were intercepted far above the atmosphere by a grid of defensive satellites. Using a combination of point defense lasers and some strange technology that seemed to warp space itself, the satellites tore apart the incoming ordnance with ease. In her bunker, Annika Patel received a continuous stream of uplifting news. Zorgan ship destroyed over Io. Criterion reinforcements driven back from Uranus. A bold boarding action had even seized control of a Zorgan dreadnought, the Marines using prototype power armor to overpower the larger alien crew in vicious close-quarters combat. A fierce grin crossed her face. The gamble had paid off. The decades of secrecy, the trillions poured into black-budget projects, it had all been worth it. Against all odds, humanity was holding its own against the most powerful empires in the galaxy. But even as hope swelled in her chest, Annika knew the real challenge was yet to come. The Zorgans and Criterions had been caught off guard, but they would adapt quickly. Already, long-range sensors showed massive fleets gathering in the outer reaches of the solar system as the enemy prepared for a second, more devastating assault. Humanity may have won the first battle, but the war for survival was just beginning. The Empire strikes back. The Zorgan and Criterion fleets that emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol were a sight that struck fear into the hearts of even the most hardened human defenders. Thousands of capital ships, each dwarfing the largest human vessels, arranged themselves in battle formation. Countless smaller craft swarmed around them like locusts ready to strip a field bare. In his throne room on the Zorgan homeworld, a seething Kraxos watched the holographic display of his assembled might. The initial defeats at the hands of the humans had been humiliating. Heads had rolled, fleets had been recalled from the far corners of the hegemony. Now the full might of the Empire was poised to crush the impudent Terrans once and for all. Burn their worlds. Kraxos snarled to his assembled war chiefs. Shatter their fleets. I want every last human in chains or ashes. The first blows fell like hammers on the outer worlds. A dozen ships were lost in the opening minutes as Criterion antimatter beams scythed through their armor like a hot knife through butter. But the humans, ever adaptable, adjusted their tactics with uncanny speed. Carriers disgorged thousands of automated fighter craft, swarming the enemy and forcing them to divide their fire. The largest human ships, the Orion-class dreadnoughts, moved to engage the enemy head-on, their phase lances carving burning gashes in the enemy hulls. The battle quickly devolved into a bitter slugging match, the awesome forces involved reducing entire moons to rubble. For every human ship destroyed, 2 alien vessels were shattered, but the Zorgan and Criterion fleets seemed endless. Slowly, inevitably, they ground their way towards Earth. Desperate times called for desperate measures. On the dark side of Luna, a secret weapon was unleashed. The Mk1 Singularity Projector, a technology deemed too dangerous for deployment until now, fired a microscopic black hole at near light speed into the heart of the enemy formation. For a brief instant, a new star seemed to bloom amidst the enemy fleet as everything within 1,000 kilometers was crushed into a pinprick of absolute darkness. The enemy recoiled, horrified by this display of incomprehensible power. But there was no mercy to be had from the human defenders. They had seen the cruelty of the Zorgan and Criterion empires, the billions enslaved and worlds shattered under their dominion. They would not allow Earth to suffer the same fate. And so, even as their fleets dwindled and their worlds burned, humanity fought on with grim determination. They fell back to the inner worlds, making the enemy pay for every inch of space with blood. All the while, the industries of Earth and Mars worked furiously to churn out more ships, more weapons, more brave soldiers ready to give their lives in defense of their species. In those dark days, heroes were made and legends were born. The pilots of the Leviathan fighters, outnumbered 100 to 1, but never outmatched. The Marines of the orbital shock battalions, dropping from low orbit to seize key installations in daring raids. The captains of the beleaguered human ships, fighting with a skill and ferocity that earned even the grudging respect of their alien foes. But would it be enough? As the enemy closed in around humanity's last bastion, and Earth's skies burned with the light of 1,000 battles, that question weighed heavy on the minds of all. The fate of humanity would be decided here, in this final desperate stand against the dark tide of alien aggression. A hard-won future. The last battle for Earth raged for a week. The skies above the battered planet seethed with the titanic forces unleashed by both sides. Continents shuddered under the hammering of Gigaton-level ordnance. The very fabric of space twisted and warped under the immense gravitic stresses of 1,000 ships, unleashing the peak of their terrible energies. It was a battle fought on every front, by every means imaginable. A-swarms clashed in the datasphere, seeking to subvert and outmaneuver their counterparts. Strike teams of Criterion gene warriors battled enhanced human super-soldiers in the rubble of shattered cities. But the true crucible of battle was in orbit, where the last and greatest of humanity's ships fought against the massed might of 2 galactic empires. Supreme Overlord Kraxos, sensing victory, had come to oversee the final conquest of Earth, personally from the bridge of his flagship, the inexorable Doom. The monstrous vessel, 20 kilometers from stem to stern, dwarfed even the largest human dreadnoughts. Its planet-cracking hyperlens had already reduced the great cities of Tokyo and New York to molten slag. But the humans would not yield. Even as their fleets dwindled and their worlds burned, they fought on with a desperate, unyielding courage that shook the galaxy. The last Orion dreadnoughts, their hulls scared and trailing atmosphere from a dozen wounds, hurled themselves at the inexorable doom with unwavering resolve. Fighters swarmed over the behemoth's hull, searching for any weakness in its formidable defenses. It was then, in that darkest hour, that a final desperate gambit was launched. A single frigate, the Indomitable under Captain Aidan Rourke, broke through the battle lines and made a suicide run for the Doom's Bridge. Riddled with plasma fire and trailing debris, the valiant ship nonetheless managed to ram the Zorgan flagship head-on in a blinding flash of mutual annihilation. Aboard the crippled flagship, Kraxos howled in disbelief as emergency bulkheads slammed down around him. This could not be happening. He would not be denied his prize, not by these pathetic apes. But the shock of the Doom's wounding seemed to ripple across the enemy fleets. The Criterians, sensing weakness, suddenly turned on their Zorgan allies with savage glee. Old rivalries and resentments, held in check only by Kraxos' iron will, exploded into open warfare between the two fleets. And the humans, seizing their chance, struck with renewed fury at their divided and distracted foes. The last reserves of Earth's forces, held back for this very moment, surged into the battle. Bolstered by this sudden influx of fresh ships and the shockingly advanced weapons they wielded, the human fleet began to push back the invaders. Slowly, agonizingly, the tide turned. The Zorgan and Criterion fleets, their cohesion shattered and their leadership in disarray, began to fall back before the human onslaught. Mighty warships that had once enslaved entire star systems now fled before the wrath of their former prey. And then, suddenly, it was over. The last alien ships, harried by swarms of human fighters and pounded by long-range fire, jumped out of the Sol system in ragged disarray. A stunned silence fell over the human fleets as realization dawned. They had done it. Against all odds, against the arrayed might of two galactic empires, humanity had won. But the cost had been staggering. Earth's cities lay in ruins, its skies choked with ash. Billions had died, both in the brutal ground fighting and the orbital bombardments. The once mighty human fleets were reduced to a shadow of their former strength, their crews exhausted and their ships battered beyond recognition. Yet even amidst the grief and pain, there was a fierce undercurrent of pride and determination. Humanity had looked into the abyss, had faced the specter of extinction at the hands of overwhelming foes, and had spat defiance into its face. They had proven, beyond any doubt, that they would not go quietly into the galactic night, and as the survivors looked to the stars, to the infinite possibilities and dangers that awaited them, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had won its right to stand tall among the stars, and woe betide any who dared threaten them again. For in the forges of this terrible crucible, a new power had been born, a power tempered by loss, hardened by suffering, and united by an unbreakable will. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would tremble before it.